This is episode 19 of the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast, broadcasting live every Sunday at 3 p.m., discussing a new topic in workers' compensation law and employment rights. My name is attorney Alexander Napolin. I'm joined by attorney George Abuado, and this week we're having a discussion about the Supplemental Job Displacement Voucher. It's a lot of words, but what it means is retraining for California injured workers who cannot go back to their job because of their work injury. So if you cannot go back to your usual and customary job duties, your employer says, hey, you can't come back here because of your permanent work restrictions, then the injured worker becomes entitled to the Supplemental Job Displacement Voucher, which is the retraining voucher. So if you've been injured at work or you work in California, you should listen to this short 10-minute discussion on this topic so that you know your legal rights. Remember, it's general information only. It's not legal advice. If you've been injured at work and you're looking for legal advice, dial our injury helpline and request a free and confidential case evaluation. Dial 844-984-8414. So if you've been injured at work, what are you entitled to in terms of job retraining, George?
That's a very good question, Alex, and a lot of people are confused by this. This is one of the benefits that you obtain towards the end of your claim, and it's going to help you to get retrained in another type of job. It's going to help you get out in the work field and try to find employment, and you're entitled to this if you do go through the process of the claim. There are some things that need to happen to trigger your entitlement of this voucher, and we'll talk about that. But essentially, Alex, the Supplemental Job Displacement Voucher is a voucher given to injured workers in California that's going to help them get retrained. It's going to help them get educated to perform a different job once they're not able to return to their previous employment. So they're not able to get full-time employment with their employer because of their new work restrictions, the permanent disability. The employer cannot now provide work for them.
They're effectively laid off, right? I mean, there's nothing here that you can do, basically.
Pretty much.
There's something they get.
Right. So a lot of clients ask, right, can my employer fire me? And that's a loaded question because they can't fire you, but they can essentially, at the end of your claim, if they're not able to find a position for you with the work restrictions that you might have or your permanent disability, they can essentially say, hey, we're sorry, we're not able to find a position for you. And now you are, like you said, kind of laid off. You've separated from employment with your company, and you are entitled to this voucher to try to get retrained for another position, try to get more education, and get out there in the job market and compete, right?
That's a great explanation that a lot of injured workers don't know about. I mean,
Right.
They think, can I get fired? Can I not get fired? What happens? What are my legal rights? My employer let me go because I can't do the job anymore. Well, what do you get? You get the voucher. You don't get any type of legal action against the employer necessarily.
Correct. And once again, this doesn't get triggered just because you got hurt at work, right? I mean, you could get hurt at work and kind of cut your finger, go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, you know what? You might have a scar, but there's no permanent disability. The voucher doesn't just get triggered because you had an injury at work. You can't just now say, well, now I want my $6,000 voucher. I want the additional money that we're going to talk about, and I want to just leave this job and go look for a different one doing the exact same thing. That's not how it works. In order for the voucher to be given to an injured worker in California, two things need to happen, and they both need to happen. Number one, there has to be a finding of permanent disability by a doctor. That could be your primary treating physician. You don't have to go to a QME, but it could be the PTP or it could be the qualified medical examiner, but a doctor has to give you a finding of permanent disability. The second part is because of that permanent disability, your job can no longer offer you full-time employment. Right? So you're no longer able to go back into the same position that you were before, and your job doesn't have any other position that you can work full-time employment with that permanent disability with the restrictions that you have, as you mentioned, Alex.
Right. And then that's going to entitle the injured worker to receive something from the insurance adjuster, although, sometimes they don't send those vouchers just because you're entitled to one.
Right.
It's something to be, aware of, that if you're without a lawyer and you're viewing this material and you're wondering what all these things mean, well, you might start to ask the insurance adjuster, but you also might start to ask a lawyer. That's when you need to dial the injury helpline, 844-984-8414. So if you have to have received a finding of permanent stationary status from the primary treating physician, and there must be work restrictions that your employer cannot accommodate.
Correct.
Now, you might be taking those restrictions to your employer, and the employer is saying, oh, well, I can't really accommodate you, get out of here. But you work for a large company and there's all kinds of other jobs and maybe other people have been accommodated in the past. Well, you might actually have an employment lawsuit.
Right.
But if you work for a smaller employer or you work for kind of a specialized type of job that's taken time to learn the skill and you can no longer do that anymore, the employer may just be able to legally say, hey, we're going to let you go. You have this finding of permanent stationary status and you have work restrictions we cannot accommodate.
Correct.
But that finding of permanent stationary status is extremely important.
Right.
You got to have that workers' comp claim and you got to have the doctor from workers' comp say all of these things
Right.
to entitle you. So if you just let the adjuster do as they please with you and you never get a final report and you really just can't do the job anymore, the employer could just be like, oh, see you later.
Right.
You're like, whoa, what just happened right now? Better go talk to a lawyer.
100% correct, Alex. And we do have to also mention that these things that need to be triggered might not happen if you settle early. So if you do settle early, maybe you don't have an attorney, you said, hey, I'll just take whatever money they give me, you could be missing out on a lot of benefits. So if you settle out early, you might not have a PNS, a permanent stationary finding by your doctor. You might not have that permanent disability that you need to even get in the game to get your voucher, right? So if you settle early, you maybe use CNR, you won't be able to slip out without a final report from a doctor. But if you settle out via compromise and release, check out our videos, right? We have a video on those on settlements. If you settle via compromise and release early, you don't have a finding of permanent and stationary maximum medical improvement, you might not be entitled to even get in the game to request this type of voucher.
Yeah, and that's something that we discussed last week was the common mistakes that injured workers make. One of them is settling too soon without a final medical report. And if you're somebody who has been displaced from your job, in other words, you feel like you're too injured to go back, you are that person who is entitled to this retraining voucher potentially is a huge loss because the retraining voucher is worth about $11,000 in total.
So if you have 2 dates of injury, let's give a quick scenario. You work at Amazon, which we've talked about before. And once again, this is just a scenario. It's a hypothetical. You work at a company like Amazon, and you might have hurt your leg with some type of equipment May 15, and then you start getting medical treatment. You're still recovering, but you come back and now you get your finger caught in a machine. That's 2 separate dates of injury, 2 separate accidents. You're entitled to 2 vouchers. If you take both of those injuries to the permanent and stationary status, get some permanent disability, restrictions, you can't be accommodated. Now you're entitled to 2 $6,000 vouchers plus an extra $5,000 check from the state of California in order to help you return to work. It's the Return to Work Fund.
Another reason why it's good to have a lawyer, maybe you do have 2 dates of injury and the insurance adjuster just has them all in one claim.
Right.
Oh, you're going to miss out on an entire $11,000 voucher? That's a lot of money.
Right.
Because it's $6,000 for the retraining, which can be applied to buy equipment, can buy credits at a school.
Yeah, so it could be educational and vocational training. Okay. You can spend up to $1,000 on a computer. You can do, buy tools for your training depending on what type of trade you're going to be getting into. Tuition fees, books, that type of stuff, administrative stuff, professional certificate fees, a resume and job search, assistance, vocational counselor services, exam prep, resume preparation, miscellaneous expenses up to $500, and professional certification fees. So it's a lot. I just ran through that, but it's a lot of stuff that you can use this $6,000 on. That's going to help you, once again, get retrained, re-educated, and get you back out there to compete in the labor market.
That $6,000 is kind of restricted into certain categories.
Correct.
If you can actually hire a licensed, what do they call them?
Vocational expert.
A vocational expert that can help you find the school and get the voucher, apply. When I say get the voucher, apply for the additional $5,000, which is just cash. Right. So what you were discussing is the $6,000 that can be divvied up to all these different types of things that that vocational expert can help you with. Plus, they can also help you apply for that additional $5,000.
Correct.
When you enroll in some of these courses. If you're a worker in California, you should subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on important discussions that will help you if you're injured at work. I encourage you to browse the station, find important discussions that will help you, but understand that this is general information that's meant to help you, but it's not legal advice. For legal advice, you need to call our injury helpline by dialing 844-984-8414 and requesting a free and confidential case evaluation.